For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jordan Smith Arrington. If you are visiting our church for the first time, please know that you are welcome in this space and that we hope that you join us again. Well, it's always a pleasure to be with you on a Sunday morning. I'm sorry to be here under the circumstances of filling in for Pastor Matt this week when he has not been well. I know we are all praying that he is healed and able to be back with us very soon. Pastor Matt has been a friend, a supporter, and a cheerleader for me throughout my own journey in ministry, which I am happy to say has finally reached completion. I stand before you this morning as a fully commissioned minister, and I'm told that in the following months we will have some sort of ceremony here at Rocky Mount Christian to celebrate the occasion. I am so grateful to the people of this church for all the support that you have shown me throughout the years. This church formed the basis of everything I came to understand about God's love, and that has been the greatest gift of my life. So this morning, I have two scripture readings for you from today's common lectionary that we will contemplate together. I'm certain that many of you know what the common lectionary is, but for those of you that are unfamiliar, the lectionary groups Old and New Testament readings that share similar themes together. And it runs according to the church calendar, which actually goes from Christmas season to Christmas season. And by church, I mean the Christian church, as the lectionary is non-denominational. And it runs over the course of a 3-year period, and it's a good way of covering most of the scripture that's in the Bible. So if you ever want to approach reading the Bible thematically, I'd advocate that you go home and Google daily common lectionary readings. And if you really want to nerd out with it, you can find daily prayers and commentaries on the scriptures for each day of the lectionary period. Okay, that's my end of my plug for approaching the Bible through the lectionary. Our first scripture reading today comes from the prophet Isaiah, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 5, verses 1 through 7. And it's called the Song of the Unfruitful Vineyard. So that's chapter 5, verses 1 through 7. So things to know before we read the scripture. This is both a song and a poem, and it was literally sung. It's styled in the form of an Israelite love song during the period. And it functions in 3 ways, actually. It's a love song. It's a parable, like Jesus-style type parable. And then it's kind of like a future telling, like an oracle future telling. Okay, so chapter 5, verses 1 through 7. The Song of the Unfruitful Vineyard. Let me sing for my beloved, my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones, and he planted it with choice vines, and he built a watchtower in the midst of it, and hewed out a wine vat in it, and he expected it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. And now, inhabitants of Jerusalem and the people of Judea, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done in it? When I expected it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down. I will make it a waste, and it shall not be pruned or hoed, and it shall be overgrown with briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds that they rain no more rain upon it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the people of Judah are his pleasant planting. He expected justice, but saw bloodshed, righteousness, but heard a cry. As you may have gathered from the reading, the term vineyard is a common metaphor for God's people in Israelite poetry. So we, as God's people, are the vineyard. Since we are reading this in English, we unfortunately miss how the last bit of the song is accentuated with the rhyming words in Hebrew. So the words justice and bloodshed rhyme and are linked together, and the words righteousness and cry rhyme in Hebrew, and they're linked together. So God planted this vineyard, and I really love the image of him just like getting down in the dirt and planting us the vineyard. It's work, planting a vineyard. He cleared the whole area out of stones and cleared it out of everything that would keep us from growing. And there's so much care and love and dedication in all of that work, and God put so much work into humanity. But the vineyard in our poem doesn't produce sweet grapes. Instead, wild, sour grapes took over, crowded out, and choked out the sweet grapes. Then our song asks us to judge. What more could God have done to make this vineyard a success? What more could God have done to cultivate those sweet grapes? He's put everything into it, and he is heartbroken, and the result is sour, wild grapes. What else is there to do but abandon this vineyard? I don't know about you, but this scripture just destroys me. It hurts my heart to think about God having so much hope in humanity that he created, and then for us to disappoint him so utterly. And this scripture is incredibly upsetting to me as a pastor as well, because there isn't any redemption here. In this scripture, God abandons us, and there are no redemptive words. So when I read this scripture, I thought about a woman that I spoke to once who since passed away. She talked to me about her daughter, her only child. And the daughter was like a darling child. She was smart, and she was pretty, and she had a charisma that people were drawn to. The daughter started to go a bit wild when she started high school, and she began doing some drugs. And so the mother sent her away to school for a year in the hopes that that might straighten her out. The daughter appeared to straighten up, and she came home, and she graduated high school, and she got married, and she had a child. And she joined the military to make a better life for the child. And then things went bad again. And the daughter started stealing drugs from the military hospital she worked in, and things continued to go downhill. Her marriage fell apart. She went to military prison for a time. She was dishonorably discharged from the military, and she abandoned her child. She descended deeper and deeper into that drug world. And the mother continued to try. She set her daughter up in apartments and tried more rehabs. She tried compassion, and when that didn't work, she tried tough love. And the daughter had a second child, born addicted to drugs, that the hospital removed from her within days. And then, within a couple of years, she walked into the hospital and delivered a third child, again born addicted, and then walked out of the hospital. Months later, the daughter overdosed from fentanyl, and she was dead before the age of 35. She had bought the drugs with money she had convinced her grandmother to give her for dental work. And she couldn't get the money from her mother because the mother had long since given up. When I spoke to the mother, she was hardened and hurt, from years of trying to grow her daughter into the vision she had of what her daughter could have been. And just like in the song of the Unfruitful Vineyard, the mother had been left with wild, sour grapes and a broken heart. And just like in the song, there wasn't any redemption to be found. But we know, as Christians, that isn't true. Redemption has come to us in the form of Jesus Christ. And no matter what goes on around us in the world, redemption is there waiting for us. While that redemption has been freely given, God does have expectations of us as followers of Jesus. God didn't give up on his vineyard because his love for us is too great. He just sent in another gardener to walk in the vineyard with us, a gardener that had the power to turn sour grapes sweet again. Our second reading comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verses 49 through 56. So that's Luke chapter 12, verses 49 through 56. Here, Jesus is speaking to his disciples, and a crowd is gathered around him. He's just finished the parable of the faithful or the unfaithful slave, and he ends it by saying, "From everyone to whom much has been given, much will be required. And from the one to whom much has been entrusted, even more will be demanded." Jesus continues to speak to the crowd, saying, "I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and what stress I am under until it's completed. Do you think that I have come to bring peace to the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, 5 in one household will be divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. They will be divided. Father against son, and son against father, and mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, and mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law." He also said to the crowds, "When you see a cloud rising in the west, you immediately say, 'It is going to rain,' and so it happens. And when you see the south wind blowing, you say, 'There will be scorching heat,' and it happens. You hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of earth and sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time?" Now, I'm not a turn before you burn kind of preacher. Fear might be a motivator for action for a time, but ultimately fear isn't powerful enough to change your heart or your beliefs. Love holds that power, not fear. But there is no getting around that this is an apocalyptic speech from Jesus. He is saying, how can you not see the signs that are right in front of your face? Now is the time to be redeemed. Now is the time to change your life, because later, well, there might not be a later for you. There might not be a later for any of us. Jesus tells the crowd that choosing to truly follow the teachings of Christ doesn't always lead to like kumbaya moments where everyone in your life will be on board with your decisions. The work of redeeming this world can and does lead to division. And doing the good, the moral, and the right thing can alienate people. It can make you a social pariah. People may mock you. But as a follower of Jesus, our desire to follow the path of redemption must supersede our fear of upsetting social or family norms. It must come before our need to fit in. It must come before our need for security and financial stability. It must come before our need to be loved by others. My husband told me that when he was younger, people would say to him, "Is that what you want to be doing when Jesus comes?" Now, I think primarily the adults in his life were using that to shame him into better behavior, which I don't advocate as a sound like parenting tactic, but that question really struck me. I really think about it all the time because I find it to be very centering for me, and perhaps it might be for you too. So I ask you, are you actively doing the work of the Lord? If you met Jesus at this moment, would you feel good about how your life has ended up? We have been given so much, entrusted with so much. Did you take that and move forward and find the path that Jesus wanted for you? Do you understand what was required out of you in this life? If Jesus came right now, would he find you welcoming and caring for his people? Would he find you caring for the sick and the disabled and the needy? Would he find you standing up for what's right? Would Jesus find you forgiving those that have wronged you? Would he find you bringing the message of God's love to those that most need to hear it? I don't know that anybody can answer yes to all of those questions. I certainly can't. But I do know that while I'm not truly worthy of God's freely given redemption, I want to be at least a little bit more worthy. Do you remember the metaphor of the vineyard? It could have ended there. God could have washed his hands of us. He could have shut it all completely down. But he didn't. Instead, he sent Jesus, and he flipped the world on its head with his love for us. We can do better. I think we owe it to God to do better. Are we in the end times? I don't know. Maybe the truth is that we've been living in the end times ever since Jesus came to the earth. So ask yourself, is this what you want to be doing when Jesus comes again?